here today to hear from a couple of consultants we've put together to speak to you. Essentially, this is a focused group for food retail, and essentially why we wanted this presented to you today was just to give you all an understanding of how you can maximise the performance of your business under the current restrictions, and also what it's going to look like for us coming out of these restrictions, and what things you can put in place now to prepare yourself for that and get the best out of your business. Firstly, I'll introduce you to Charles Bowie from Brain & Poulter. He's a food consultant, and he's going to present this package to you today. Over to you, Charles.
All right, thank you. Well, firstly, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your attendance. For the last, sadly, too long, we've been helping people during the various incarnations of different phases of COVID. Obviously, we deal directly with retailers, sometimes in person, sadly at the moment remotely, but still, we can still help people even remotely. And because we help people nationally, we're Sydney-based, but at different phases over the last year. Obviously, Melbourne had a very severe lockdown last year. Now Sydney, unfortunately, has a relatively prolonged lockdown. And what we do is that we get lots of learnings because we are speaking directly to business owners in food and in retail. We are always trying to advise them in what's the best course at this moment in time. Right? Things keep changing, things keep shifting. We understand that. We understand that it's really hard. We understand that it's a real challenge. The purpose to this and the intent of this today is to share with you some of the things that we've seen retailers do in these sort of specific circumstances right now, okay? Yeah, I've updated this, specifically this week for the current circumstance. In another month, things might be slightly different again as we start to get hopefully into a point where restrictions relax to a degree. I don't pretend to predict the future. What we do know is that if we understand exactly what's happening and understand that things will slowly evolve and change and shift, we can prepare as best as possible to then get as many sales as possible in the current environment. So we're just here to try and pass on what we see, share our knowledge, in the hope that it can help you get through this period. So in that spirit, if I can move on to the first slide, the next slide, please, just for the introduction. Sorry, Kate. Yep, sorry, thanks. Okay, so what we're going to do is take you through, I suppose, how you can maximize takeaway, most importantly, in the immediate term, and then what things start to look like once there is the allowance for some additional dine-in, whether that's al fresco, external dining capacity, plus takeaway. We'll have a clearer idea about that probably by the end of August, and at least possibly some timings. That doesn't mean to say that everything will be magically resolved by then. But we've helped quite a few people in the last year, and the reason why the Thai Rock example was there is because they had to close down. They had to close down 2 restaurants, one at Wetherell Park and one at Potts Point. We helped them during that period. We helped them reopen, and it's survivable. They're still here. They're still trading. They're trading like you and exactly like everybody else at the moment. They're back to takeaway only. But I suppose it's a message of some hope that it's very difficult, but people can sustain. And if I can go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to take you through just a few things. What are the things that you can control? What's the current sentiment like? What are customers looking for? Where are we now? Just a quick snapshot, very briefly. I'm going to take you through the things that will really help your business, some ideas on what you can do with your menu and also profitability and margin management. And then, most critically, how you can connect with customers over the next couple of months. What are the things that you can sell them? What are the ideas that we see customers who are at home responding to best? What are the messages retailers are sending out in terms of either product or customer loyalty or recognition of customers? And then lastly, I'm going to take you through what we think, I suppose, the reopening starts to look like and some of the considerations that we have seen work elsewhere as things reopen, because remember, we've had closed faces before plus reopenings, and the difference this time will be as we start to reopen, we will have a higher degree of vaccination. The last time when we were closed at Christmas and reopened, we never had that, you know, we still never knew when the vaccination would be. So this is a difficult period, but once we get through it, you know, there will definitely, things will be a lot better as we get towards the end of the year, and hopefully we won't have any more lockdowns. So if I can go to the next slide, please. Okay. And, you know, if I, next slide again. So just where are we now, what we're seeing? So immediately before the current lockdown, there were quite a few surveys about how people's behaviour had changed as a result of the last year. I'd like to draw your attention to a few things in this. You know, this was measuring how people are more likely to or less likely to, or what they value or don't value as much, and how that had changed. So this was a survey which was taken between October 2020 and March 2021. So just, it was where the customer sentiment was at just roughly before, you know, a recent lockdown, just 3 months before a recent lockdown. People are definitely more price sensitive. The really important thing for everybody to take away, the one big takeaway from this, is that customers are far more comfortable with digital tech, and that has implications for driving sales through your business later. We'll talk about that at the end. People were very local, right? We've seen that in the last year where businesses were kept open during lockdowns because of the support of the local community. And people do have a greater sense of the need to be healthy. Now, having said that, people will also order comfort food, and they will still order fry food. But, you know, like, I think people have been made to focus on their health. So that becomes an important consideration for them. Next slide, please. So this is, I suppose, what you need to do now is consider how customer preferences and expectations have changed and what that might mean for your business. So here's another survey which was done by Podium at the start of this year about what's changed. You know, certainly people value, you can see the measure there before COVID and after COVID. Now, after this session, this will be made available for you, apart from as a recording, you know, the PDF for this can also be made available for you. So I won't linger too much in some of the detail in here, but it's just to let you know that we, apart from dealing with retailers, we do research stuff quite a lot just to understand what the customer sentiment is like. The main takeout for you from this is, I think you need to understand how customers have changed or what they might expect. Now, everybody will be rather tentative when things start to re-emerge for the first week or two, once lockdowns start to relax. However, people will also be very glad to get it. So, you know, it's understanding where they will be. So for an example, if you have additional alfresco seating, what does that change your customer base? Will customers engage with that? There has been a massive extension of alfresco seating prior to the most recent lockdown. And every time when that was made available, it helped businesses considerably. We did a lot of work with a lot of retailers in Sydney CBD, and the alfresco seating effectively kept them in the game when things were there. There might be a change to when people come or when people want to dine. So it's a good opportunity to look at extending, you know, having a dinner service perhaps from 5 p.m. so that you can cater for families. It depends on your local customer base. And then I think in terms of understanding customers, you really need to look at how you approach your marketing and what you might need to change as we get ready to reopen. But there is more material at the end that will help you assess that or understand that better and prepare for that. Next slide, please. This is just a placeholder for you. I would hope that everybody who can apply for help and assistance from the New South Wales government and the federal government has done so, but certainly there is available support. And next slide, please. We also have in our most recent newsletter this week only, compiled for retailers by each state a list of everything that's available to you. So it's not just 3 things, it's like far more than that. That's a whole page of different links and different resources we would recommend you check. Within this slide, there is a link at the bottom which you can click on, which will take you to that, and that will allow you to see everything that's there. So just a good idea to go through the checklist and think, okay, well, we've applied for this, or we're eligible for this, or I wasn't aware of this. So we've compiled it for you to make it a bit easier, because we understand there's a lot to be done at the moment and a lot to think about. So hopefully this will give you just a one-click solution. And next slide, please. So moving forward, that's just a quick summary of where we're at. How do we see the next few months and where we're at? Really, it's a marathon and not a sprint, right? We would recommend that everybody needs to focus on controlling what you can control. Unfortunately, many things are out of our control, right? We understand that. You can't do anything about it, we can. But what we can do is make sure that we are aware of the situation and steer our businesses through the different phases. You know, like it could be different in another month as things relax a little. It could be slightly different again 1 month after that. We think there will be a few steps between now and the end of the year, possibly three to four different changes, different relaxations. But in the meantime, you've still got to maximize takeaway for the next, we reckon, for the next 4 to 6 weeks. It'll be primarily takeaway at least. So therefore, we've just put here the things that we would like you to consider about what you can control, and that is menu, margin, using any data you've got in your point of sale systems or through orders or anything to analyze the above and plan. Driving sales. I'm going to show you examples about what retailers have done with takeaway on there. And we believe that it can be described as this. It's the right offer. So what do customers value? Are you then suggesting it to them at the right moment? So here's your solution for breakfast or lunch or dinner or family size, and the right platform. How do you get this out to customers? Where will they see your messaging? Is it available in any social media you may have? Is it available on an online ordering platform? But that's something to be worked through. And then after that, how do you engage with your customers? How do you talk to your customers? So we also have some advice in here about best practice social media. Don't be alarmed. We don't suggest that people need to go and get a website. For the last 12 months, we have often been able to help people reasonably successfully if they have only had an Instagram account and a phone number. You know, so we're determined to get cost-effective or no-cost solutions, which just rely on ideas. But you need to have the means for you to talk to customers and for customers to talk to you and see what you're doing and understand where you're at. And then lastly, towards the end, you know, you can control how you plan for the reopening. We don't know exactly when that is. We believe that will be staged in phases, but what's involved in that, certainly, even though it seems forever away, good time to start planning. And then lastly, I will share with you what we've seen in terms of how retailers are using technology quite clever these days to drive sales, or they use the technology and one of the byproducts is that it changes customer behavior and customers spend more. So I'll share some examples of that with you so that as you get ready, you can think about what else you might be able to use to make your business more profitable, drive more sales and more efficient. Next slide, please. So menu and margin. I'm just going to talk through this quickly because there's examples in here. There's a lot of detail in these slides. I don't expect you to concentrate too much on them at this point in time, which is why you will receive a copy. This is an opportunity to look at your menu in terms of profitability, right? With a lot of people we've worked with, at the moment, the best thing for takeaway is to have a shorter menu with items which have got the most profit for you, which people can easily see online and order. You don't need a website, but how do they see what you have? And yet again, you can create awareness of these things quite simply just through effective use of social media, which will take you to. It's also the time to obviously look at any back of house systems, how you can produce food really quickly. And the whole intention of this for the outcome is to improve your profitability. Most critically at the moment, for everybody who orders from you takeaway, we really need to look at how we decrease the average spend. Yeah, we've got to try and make sure that if somebody orders from you, you've got good enough sides, or you package the product up as a meal solution with a few elements so that people tend to spend more. And in the last year, yet again, we managed to help people when the first phase of COVID hit and it went to takeaway only. We were able to help people start to drive takeaway sales, but then over a period of a couple of months, get higher and higher price points through having the right offers and promoting them in the right fashion. So right offer, right moment, right platform, right? It can be done. And just as a side thing, there's the opportunity to maybe improve staff productivity, but you know, I would imagine most people are running quite lean at the moment. Next slide, please. So most people these days have reasonably good point of sale systems. You also might have some delivery data. You might have a customer database. Now, that can be many things. That could be people that follow you on Instagram, people on Facebook, or customers who you have their mobile details or an email. If you don't have a customer database, and I'll touch on this later in another slide, it's really important to have a customer database. It's your means of talking to people about the fact that you're open, you've got an offer, and you're there to help them. But a lot of people these days, compared to 5 years ago, have got far more data than they used to have. So it's about using that depending on your point of sales or your delivery platforms or your social media. Next slide, please. And why does it matter? Because it helps inform your business decisions. So yet again, control what you can control. It allows you to look at your margin. It allows you to understand customer demand. So you could have people ordering at 5 o'clock, where, you know, in lockdown, who previously would order at 6 or come into the restaurant at 6. It can change, yes? And you need to understand where you have the peaks and the troughs. Therefore, you can then roster it appropriately. It helps you to set business goals. So I just mentioned about increasing average spend. Like, so if you know what your current average spend is, it's good to plan and think, what are the couple of things we can change, or how can we promote bundles or a meal deal at a higher price point to increase the average spend? And also the data will help you develop future offers, and it will inform your marketing, not only during the takeaway phase, but also even as you go into the next stage of reopening, whenever that may be. So it's really important to use. And even if you just set aside half an hour a week to look at what data you've got coming in and what it tells you about customer behavior, and then it will help you identify further opportunities. Next slide, please. So this is the sort of thing where there's way too much detail, but it's an important exercise. Effectively, if you're looking at shortening your menu, it's really important for you to understand the cost of goods for each menu item. How much money do you make, and how much money do you make on your most popular volume items? So, you know, you might sometimes want to just focus on a shorter menu with far more profitable items or bigger sales, right? You want to drive home what you've got and what you're good at. Next slide, please. Yet again, if you've got stuff which you sell a lot of, but it's not particularly profitable, it might be time to reconsider whether you have that, you know, because at the end of the day, you bank profit, you don't bank sales. You rely on margin as much as you rely on sales. So I would urge people to take this opportunity also to go through the menu and work out. And I get that people haven't been opened a long time, so I appreciate that. But it's probably a good opportunity now to revisit the menu in terms of both profit and sales. Next slide, please. This is also a good time to look at, you know, just take a look at staffing analysis. So I know that people are running quite lean at the moment. It's the same everywhere. This is an opportunity to look at your data, look at your staff, when customers are ordering, and just make sure that you can run things as efficiently as possible, but also have people at the right time for when you might be getting customers ordering. People might be getting takeaway or through a delivery platform earlier. So, you know, you might move stuff earlier, finish people earlier, etc. And next slide, please. So I'm showing you this, and we'll come back to it. So just bear in mind why I've put a photograph of people seemingly in a dark street doing nothing. These are people in Melbourne called Worrell who were doing their own deliveries, and they were struggling. And they posted this. This has got a happy ending, so I'll take it that. But they posted this to share with customers, to apologise and say to customers, oh, you know, we don't have enough drivers, and they were using every family member. Because some people are still, you know, delivering themselves and not using delivery platforms. So we think that using a delivery platform is a decision for business owners, but we understand that also, you know, like sometimes the fees can be quite high. So some people by necessity will decide to deliver themselves. So this is just a slide to say, if you are considering doing this, here's some of the things that you might need to bear in mind. I don't know what it's like for everyone at the moment at Ed.Square, but we'll revisit this particular example of water, and I'll show you the happy ending for that later on. Next slide, please. So this is the critical part about menu engineering. And, you know, it sounds like a fancy term. It's not really. what are we trying to do here? We're trying to get the average customer spend up. There's two key areas to this. Number one, creating or promoting appealing add-ons or sites. So sometimes people, people when they order online, and we've seen this time and time again, we've worked with chains who sell more online. This is even, like pre-COVID, they sell far more online in the stores. Customers, when they order online through their own websites, will add more sides if the menu is structured appropriately, right? Because people don't want to order an insufficient amount. So it's good to look at your menu, particularly for takeaway, and think, have I got enough things where people can add another $5 here, or another $7 here, or another $3 here for the overall thing? The second part, and I'll show you some examples then, is to create bundles which cover off quite a few things. You want to provide customers, remember, customers buy solutions, right? They might buy individual products, but at the moment, if everybody's at home, they're going to be more likely to, they need a break from cooking, they're going to be more likely to order a larger amount. So, but they're looking for something that makes their life easier primarily. So they will order solutions at a price point. They'll order by time of day. They'll still order by day of the week, even during lockdown. And we've seen it over the last 12 months. People order differently at the weekend than they do during the week. People spend a little bit more at the weekend. And understanding that allows you to promote higher priced deals towards the end of the week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then lastly, remember that customers order by occasion, so there's definitely an everyday offer that you can provide, but people still celebrate, they're stuck at home, but people still have birthdays, people still have wedding anniversaries, people still have a need to have something which enhances their enjoyment of that occasion, and you have the opportunity to provide that. Next slide, please. So I'm going to just show you some of these examples of how people might participate when, right? So number one is people have habits. People have everyday moments. So most cafes have realized that when people are allowed their 1 hour's exercise a day, it's a good opportunity to sell coffee, absolutely. And this is an example from Jesve. But obviously that covers breakfast, lunch, and then dinner. So understanding the smaller priced items that people might want to buy, it's good to remind them that you're still open and that you provide these things. So therefore, yet again, if you have just social media, then you can promote that, and you can just remind people that you become their habit for their everyday occasion. So certainly focusing on that customer solution would be of value for you. Next slide, please. So yet again, provide people with comfort and convenience. What was really interesting last year was that whenever doesn't matter what type of business you've got, whenever people provided comfort food or traditional items that people would get. So I've put some examples in here for you, people supplying meal kits. You see that there's a chicken parmy there. So because people, a lot of people traditionally have a chicken parmy at a pub or a cafe, right? They don't necessarily know how to make it. And this is the comfort and convenience part. There are things that people like as comfort food, but they don't necessarily have the skill set to make that. So depending on what type of product you have, there is an opportunity to say, oh, remember that thing that you love, but you might not have the skills to make. We've got that for you. So it's good to look at your menu and think, what are the items that provide comfort and convenience that we could then broadcast to customers? Next slide, please. Yet again, this is a good example of how you can get people to spend more. So, the price is right. And if you sell bundles to people at higher price points, then quite often there's better margin. So I've got 3 examples on here. So Corbett and Claude, we worked with last year. When the first few weeks during lockdown, they were only talking about lunch, and then they started to talk about 2 pizzas on a Friday night, and then they eventually worked up to this $85 price point, 3 pizzas and a garlic bread and chips and 3 soft drinks. Perfect for a family, perfect for people then. The one in the middle was also warm, but it was like a $99 box, which effectively feeds sort of 4 people. Right? So yet again, people will buy at a price point. People think, oh, well, that's dinner for 4 for under $100, or here's something for under $50. Like, so hitting those price points, we have a few options really hits. And the last example there is from Popolo Gelaria. which also sells pizza, right? So, and it also sells wine. So this is the offers that they've constructed for people. And you can see that they've got lots of different price points, you know, even up to like 130. So they allow people options to tap in. And, but yet again, it's bundled. So people become less price sensitive. They don't complain about, they don't think, oh, that's $17 or that thing's four things. It's a solution at a price that feeds 2, 4 people, and it might be for lunch, and it might be for night time, and it might be for the weekend, but it definitely helps you increase the average transaction. So next slide, please. One of the things that's been really interesting during this lockdown is that the people that we helped last year now have similar things that they did last year, but at a higher price point. Yep. So once a week, they might say, here's the $99 dinner box, or here's the $120 dinner box, or the $70 dinner box. But what's important is that if you do an offer like that and it's one big thing, it's good to change it every week. So, you know, if you want repeat business, don't repeat it. So just have one key thing, but change it every week. And this is from Malabar in Sydney. Well, you know, they just have this idea of the TV dinner, $37. You know, it's a Friday night, you might get it. So they change what's in it each week. And, you know, that price point, because people will buy two, they buy one each, and suddenly it's a $74 item. So, you know, that kind of solution and convenience really works. Next slide, please. Some people will provide meal kits. Meal kits have been a big growth thing. So, you know, if you also want to look at another additional revenue stream, some people might want to buy something from you and then put it in the fridge and have it the next day. So if you have the opportunity or the capacity to provide the ingredients for something you have, but for people to make it on their own. So it's sort of like, you know, you're meeting them halfway. You're providing them the ingredients to recreate the thing that they like from you. The reason why it's good to consider it is because people might buy dinner hot, take away one night, but they also may buy a meal kit that they can have in the fridge for, you know, the next night or 2 days later. So it allows you an additional revenue stream, and therefore it's worth seeing if you can, if there's even one thing you can do, whether it would be a make your own burger, or here's our pizzas, which you just need to reheat, or here's a steak sandwich and the ingredients. You know, yeah, again, it will be different for everyone's menu, but this has got some traction. So it could be just a sale that you might otherwise not get because people are buying for 2 days later and not just that now. Next slide, please. Treats. People buy treats. We talked about comfort food. People love sweets. Anybody that I know during this lockdown and the previous lockdowns, no matter whether it was in Sydney or Melbourne or even Brisbane, whenever they put together a box of treats, yet again, higher price point, always works. So, you know, I think that there's a kind of $20 to $30 price point, and then there's probably a $40 to $50 price point, roughly, for treats. But yeah, again, it depends on the nature of what you do. Next slide, please. And, you know, this is really important. People still need to celebrate. I mentioned it before. The photograph on the left is actually from a company called We Are Nutty. So they started making baby birthday cakes. So if you're only allowed 2 people in the house, or sometimes there's only 2 people in the house or 4, they used to do cakes for 6 or 8. They started making small cakes, and they find it very hard to keep up. So, you know, people will buy a cake, or people will send a cake to somebody else. So, you know, yeah, again, not everybody makes cakes. I get that. But, you know, what's the thing that you have that would allow people to order it in for a special occasion and a special moment? Then how you broadcast that and get that is absolutely has value. Next slide, please. So this part is really about how you want to talk to customers using social media. What sort of message you want to get out? So we're not talking product here. We're talking about how you share your journey, how you share your story. So just to come back to the Thai rock example at the start, the only reason they survived was because they had loyal, local, regular customers, and they talked to them continuously on Facebook. And the people would then criticize them, people that never even used them, and people would badmouth them or give them grief. Their customers would defend them on social media till eventually the good people drowned out the people who had never even been there, who, you know, like were negative. So that loyalty and that connection to your customer at this moment is really important. You can't do it face to face, but you can do it through social media. So you've got to maintain that relationship for the next few months until they can come and see you again. And there's different things that you can talk to them about. This is quite loose. So here's an interesting thing. People still use phones. Every time when I speak to retailers, it's amazing how many people actually phone up and place a takeaway order, even when they've got a delivery platform, even if they have a website. Some people just like to phone. Next slide, please. And that matters because sometimes people don't have their phone number on Google. I've noticed this before. And here's the stat from 2019 on the right-hand side about how often people will, when they booked. So this was pre-COVID, obviously, when they booked a restaurant, they would actually still call. And, you know, this is a very recent example from the Melbourne lockdown of a bar, a restaurant / bar. And, you know, on Instagram, they talk about giving us a call. So quite often in the last while, even before this lockdown, I come across people and it's really hard to find their phone number. And I know it's a really obvious thing, but that really basic information, some people still like to call. So, and the other thing to remember is that when people go into Google Business, quite often the number's there or there's a call button. So they just press one button. And that immediacy of using technology sometimes will result in a phone call, or if you get it right, it takes them to a link through to what you want to sell them. People don't like to spend too much time. I believe that how businesses are represented in Google listings actually drives a lot of the phone calls as well. People look up a business and then just press the call button. So it's just something to bear in mind. Next slide, please. Here's a great example of somebody in Melbourne called Mamas, where, so they used Instagram, right? They put out an offer, here's the meal for the day. Then the next screen is to call us. So they're using modern technology to drive ordering through phone calls. Then they list the menu, but then they list the add-ons. So they're allowed to deliver wine and sell wine. So for each food order, they say, don't forget to buy. So, you know, that allows people to mix and match as well. But yet again, the simplicity, you know, so you can do stuff cheaply, social media, plus even a phone. You don't need to get too sophisticated, but you've got to have at least some social media presence and you've got to have the right kind of messaging. Next slide, please. If you use delivery platforms, make it really obvious, right? Just make it really obvious. So, you know, there's a few examples for you to look at, you know, where people are promoting Uber Eats, but there's somebody else that mentions that they're available in Uber Eats and menu log. They've also put their mobile number. So it's, but yet again, if you do use them, don't rely on, if you have a connection and a social media presence, don't wait for them to find you somehow on Uber Eats or menu log or DoorDash. Tell them that you're there. That's the point. Next slide, please. So the kind of messaging and what you want to say to customers is really important. So because we've had successive lockdowns and it's happened in different states at different times, the first thing you want to do is let customers know that you're still trading, you continue to trade, you're in takeaway only, you're in a clear form, but that's timely, that's updated fast enough, because first thing that people unfortunately will assume the worst. So they think, oh, don't think that'll be opened, or they assume that you're not opened, or you've got to tell them. You've got to make it really simple and really obvious what's happening. Tell them how it works, what the rules are, how they can get orders from you, how they can talk to you. So that's the first thing that you should always do. And the reason why I mention this is because if restrictions relax at some point in the next 6 weeks, when the restrictions relax, you want to have a message ready to go to tell people how it works and what the rules are for how they can come and safely re-engage with you in some form. So that's why I mentioned that. Next slide, please. So here's an example from Melbourne straight away. As soon as they went into lockdown, and I follow obviously lots of businesses we've worked with on social media to see how they use it. So lockdown 6 was the Melbourne message. This was just last week. Right away, as soon as it happened, this restaurant, this is in social media, they had their Friday lunch offer. Yeah, and then they've got, you can see there, it's just slightly order online now for tomorrow night. They're telling people what's available right away. They're telling them that they can order for tomorrow night. Right away, they're telling them how it is and what the food is and what the price is. So that immediacy of contact is really important. Next slide, please. back to our dear friends in the dark trying to find houses because they don't have enough delivery drivers. Just be really honest with people. People want you to succeed. Customers really want you to succeed. They don't want you to go under. They're happy to support you if you've got regular customers that are there. There's no shame in saying to people, we're learning as we go along. Everybody is learning as they're going along at the moment, right? It's tough. So, you know, would anybody advise like a restaurant to put a photograph of people in the street looking lost and the photograph's not very good quality, it's quite dark? Any professional marketing person would not advise that, right? But this is just a family, the called Forum. It's Indonesian food in Melbourne. So they put that. So you see, I've got 10 days ago. Then 6 days ago, they post on Instagram only. This is the only form of communication they use, that they've hired 2 drivers, right? Great, well done. And you can see the timeline. As of Wednesday, and this is 2 days ago, you can see there that they talk about how they've already got tons of orders for this weekend coming, for the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So that openness and communication actually has value, right? It's good for you to share your story with people, but it's good for you to say, we acknowledge there's a problem and we'll fix it. And then if you have that, you can see quite clearly the result. They were honest with people, and then people want to support them, and they get that. This is in a week and a half. They go from they don't quite know how they can even get stuff delivered to having people supporting them. They get drivers, they get people to help them. So, you know, be honest, be upfront with people. People will help you. Next slide. Yet again, even though you think, why would you put a photograph of an empty restaurant? Why would you put a photograph of people in a hazmat suit? Quite simple, you know, like tell your story, show people what you're going through. So the first one there is from Coffee Club in Ryan in Queensland. You know, they're saying, oh, here's their empty restaurant. It's empty and we're cleaning it. The second one is somebody in Newcastle who unfortunately needed to go into lockdown because there was a casual contact, not a close contact. So that's them showing what they're doing to reassure customers. And the last one is just a cafe that I've done work with in the CBD in Melbourne. And they've put in a cycle, like a fixed bike, so that the staff can exercise when it's quiet. This is good. It's good to tell people what's happening. Next slide, please. The most important thing with customers who are supporting you is to thank them. So many people these days are writing on bags when they send it out. It's a feel-good moment. It works. It's a really simple thing for you to have a handwritten note to thank people if you've got using a delivery platform that gets dropped in. I mean, I've had this happen to me and people don't know who I'm, just as a customer and all the stuff, you know, and they've written your name and there's a love heart and it's nice. You feel a connection, right? So there are cheap, simple things that can be done that can maintain the relationship. The other one on the right-hand side is just take photographs saying thank you. People will be loyal, and it's important to recognize the community, thank them, and so how much they appreciate them. It works 2 ways, and it keeps them connected to you until they can physically be there in person. So there's real value in it. Find a way to talk to them, whether it's social media, whether it's writing in a bag, whatever it takes. Next slide, please. So where are we at? What's happening? What do we think? You know, unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball and I don't have any magical powers. I read as much information as possible. I talk to people in the industry. I talk to retailers. I read everything possible about what's happening with the government restrictions. You know, it's not always enjoyable to read, but it's important to keep yourself informed. So here's a few things that I think you need to consider as you reopen, whenever that might be, and in order to get ready for that point in time. Next slide, please. So this is the quote for a restaurateur in Melbourne, but I'm going to read it because I think it matters. You need to understand, I suppose, what customers' mindset might be as they re-emerge. And, you know, and in Melbourne, they're the only comparable situation because they had such a long lockdown last year. So there's value in looking at their situation. You know, people will want to come out again. They've been inside for a long time now. They'll be cautious when they come out at first, that's for sure. And you know that your numbers are going to be limited, right? You know, your ability, your capacity to have a lot of people in it might be 1 per 4 square meters. There might be increased, enhanced alfresco seating that are required. But you just want to make sure that you've thought that through so that when they do come in, it's seamless, it's easy, they feel reassured. And sometimes that might be considering which technology to use or where they're going to be seated, how you would deliver the food to them, whether that's in disposable packaging only, because they might have a fear about plates or, you know, cross-contamination, who knows. But you just want to think through it properly once we get closer to an idea about when that might happen. Next slide, please. Always remember to start with the basics. Word of mouth is still the most, this is a restaurant survey from 2019. You can do this in 2035 and it will still be the most important thing. Word of mouth, what people tell their friends and family about places they've been, makes or breaks a business. These days, that's a mixture of in-person conversations or increasingly during a lockdown, online conversations or text conversations or phone calls, right? Or sometimes you see your friends posting something on social media, or they've had this meal and you think, oh, that's great, where did you get that? So always remember that once you have a social media presence, that helps you create word of mouth. Once people like what you've done, they might share that with somebody. Your regular customers who like you, in effect, become your marketing assistants, and they will share that content so that other people see it, and it gives you greater visibility. So that's word of mouth these days also. Next slide, please. We believe alfresco will form a really important part of dining for the first few months and probably through the whole summer. So I've dropped this in. This was actually from last year, right? But it's not wrong. It's still right, and it will still be the way forward, because when they increased the alfresco capacity, and our company recently did work at the Rocks in Sydney, so I'll share this confidentially, before the lockdown, and the addition of alfresco seating there made a massive difference to the sales of those businesses in the Rocks, which were previously very dependent on international tourism and weekend city-siders or interstate travellers. That one thing, because they're older buildings there and they're smaller internals, that one thing with the free alfresco seating made a massive difference for them. And I'll also talk about how some of them then use technology to get even better results there. Next slide, please. Once you're ready to go, tell the world. Once you're ready to reopen, no matter what form, tell the world. This is really good communication that Corbett and Claude did last year. They're based in Brisbane primarily, that they did last year when the lockdown opened. Yet again, tell people how it works, tell them that you're back in business, tell them what the capacity is. If possible, encourage them to book in advance. So you might need to start to look at how you take bookings as well. If you don't use a booking system, that would definitely be worthwhile considering. Next slide, please. Also, as you reopen, you probably need to think about if you have alfresco dining and people might be sitting 50 meters away from your tenancy, but they buy from your tenancy, or they order and pick up from your tenancy and then go and sit in alfresco seating, then, you know, you need to have disposable packaging. You know, you won't be taking plates, it'd be too hard to manage that. Who knows how you would get them back. So there will probably be a consideration for you to look at what packaging looks like as well. You might already have this, but if it's going to be primarily alfresco initially, then you need to think this part through. Next slide, please. So what's the recipe for continuing to engage your customers and talk to them and keep them in the loop? The 7 key ingredients. You need to have a solid My Business listing on Google. We'll talk about why that matters. You really want to try and build some sort of database of customers, preferably email, even though everybody gets emails for everything these days. If you like a business, you open it and you respond. Email still gets opened 4% at the time, whereas social media might get you 1.5 to 2% responsiveness. It is a higher rate of responsiveness. Instagram is really good for personalizing it. I think there's a slight preference for Instagram because Instagram is the happy place. People never post bad experiences on Instagram, but people will complain on Facebook. People will write a lot of comments on Facebook. So you don't really see photographs on Instagram of people having a miserable time. So it's definitely a more slightly friendlier or more positive platform to use. I think you've got to use QR codes far more effectively. Everybody uses it for compliance. I'll talk about that in a second. You've got to really think about what you want to sell and when and to whom. So some kind of promotional calendar about items you would like to sell. You've got to provide good content that people are interested to pick up on. And then you've got to be responsive to customers. So if you develop a relationship with customers, you've got to be available for them to answer any queries. I'm talking about primarily online, but also in person as well. Next slide, please. You know, this is a big quote, but you know, if it isn't in Google, it doesn't exist. It's a guy called Jimmy Bell. So we know that surveys show that, you know, like reviews and basic information in Google is still the way that people will find you if they've never been to you before. It's going to be the prime way that they find you, for sure. You know, near me searches have massively increased, right? So people will say, I want, you know, like a butcher's near me, I would like a cafe near me. That's how people search these days. And we all do that. Everybody does that. So you know that it sort of makes sense, but what you look like on Google primarily needs a bit of attention, generally. Next slide, please. I won't labour on this because I'm conscious of time, but, you know, like, yet again, people tend to, you know, go to places that have got higher ratings. How do you get higher ratings on Google? You encourage people to leave reviews if they've enjoyed it. How do you get them to drive reviews? We'll come on that in a minute, but certainly people value them. This is from a survey which was just done this year by a company called Podium, and it just was an analysis of Google reviews, customer reviews, and businesses with good reviews, and how it matched up against the sales or the customer satisfaction, and the customer satisfaction rather. Next slide, please. So fascinatingly, a lot of people will make a decision about a business while they're near the business, right? I mean, 28% of Australian consumers have said that they make a decision, they'll stand outside the business and look it up online first before they decide, right? But that really said, this was the same survey. That really surprised me, but yet again, I've personally done it. So, you know, if you've never been somewhere for the first time, certainly, you know, you want a minimum, you know, a lot of people say that a minimum of 3.5. If you're below 4, really, a lot of people won't look at you. So how do you get people to leave reviews? It's really simple. This is the same survey. People are more likely to do it if you've got a sign in the tenancy asking them to leave a review, and you could use a QR code as well to encourage them to leave reviews. There's different ways to do that. But obviously people only leave reviews if they've had a good experience. So, you know, you still need to have good product and good service primarily. Next slide, please. If possible, because everything's been so localized, if you really understand your local customer base in depth, that's great, well done. If you don't, I would encourage you to go through this as a checklist later on and just think, well, if I really understand the local area in sufficient depth as we get ready to develop, where are the opportunities within that? I mentioned very early in the piece about data and understanding which customers would be there. You don't need to become a permanent researcher, I get it, but if you've got any time or an opportunity, then I would encourage you to try and talk to each other, talk to other retailers, talk to centre management, get as much information, match that with the people you see, try and get a really good feel for who's local, because, and yet again, probably in the first relaxation, we're still going to be very dependent on immediate locals. Next slide, please. Build a database. Right? Just build a database of customers, whether it's a phone number or an email, or they follow your Instagram. Use a booking system, because once you have a booking system as well, that allows you to build a database. You can see when people will come, how often they will come. You will capture their email address. You can then market to them. You could even do a text-based system. And, you know, Facebook and Instagram as well is still a form of database. So, you know, it's just interesting to see. And there's like we speak to many businesses, there's a direct relationship. You know, the more people you've got following you allows you to talk to them with an offer, and then you've got a higher response in the offer. And the people last year, the people who only had Instagram quite often and a phone, were the people we were able to help to develop marketing content, promotional content, which got them greater sales. It never solved every problem, but it helped them more during a difficult time. So try and build that would be my advice. Next slide, please. So, you know, what does the future look like? And the future looks like QR codes. The future The future is here. The future looks like QR codes. It looks like ordering systems that you can use from a table, from anywhere. And I'll explain why in another second. And it also looks like being able to book online. Like that's it. Yet again, a lot of restaurants that use these things generally get a better result. So you might only try one of these things, but QR codes can be created online for free. There's a QR code generator. You can just go and put in anything. You can put your menu. You could put your business listing. You could have a thing that takes people to the Google page so they could leave a review. What you got to remember is that people like simplicity and easy cut through. The less clicks, the more success. Next slide, please. So I've seen people start to use QR codes in a really interesting way. So, before COVID, QR codes were a non-event in this country. They were reasonably popular in Japan and some Asian countries. They've barely been used here. The first 9 months of the pandemic, people were just using them for compliance. The last 9 months, I've seen people use them to sell stuff, right? So here's an example there about how you can use the QR codes. You can link it in videos and how to order. Or if you send a meal kit, it could come with a QR code that shows people how to assemble it and cook it. You can use it to sign up to the database. If you have QR codes on tables, you could have one QR code which is different from the others for people to order, and that's a lucky QR code, and that person gets the opportunity to win things. So you can start to use them really creatively. You're limited only by your imagination. It costs $0 to create QR codes, and everybody's used to using them now. So it's a really valuable tool in your armory. And the same thing's happening in the States, the same thing's happening in the UK and Europe and Asia. They're here to stay. Customers are comfortable with them, and it allows you to talk to them directly or direct them to what you want them to look at. So it's just something to bear in mind. And that could be a table ordering system. Next slide, please. So this is just an example of how people have used it. Thai Rock, when they reopened, did a QR code for the menus, so there were no physical menus. This is Chat Thai in the city, where they had, like a competition where you could win stuff. And the last example is just menus as well. But, you're driving people to things, or you're offering them convenience. Next slide, please. This is the example I was talking about when you have an order system which is on the table. This is Fortune Award at the Rocks. So this is confidentially, I don't name names in the deck, but this is part of the work we did at the Rocks. So people will order, if you have an order system with just QR codes, like the photograph we saw, which was at El Camino's, people will order their food through that. When they used it at Fortune Award, they still had, you could order in person inside. This is for food sales only, not alcohol sales, yeah? You could order in person at the bar, or you could just grab a table outside and just use the QR code in the menu system and order from there. The sales of the people that sat outside were 25% more than the sales from the people that ordered internally. I've heard this time and time again, and it's how people use technology. McDonald's touchscreens, anybody that uses touchscreens as well, I know Chatting uses touchscreens, the average sale is usually 25 to 30% higher. Customers are really good at selling stuff to themselves. But what you need to do is provide the means for them to understand, easily see your menu, order. So any technology which facilitates that is a fantastic thing. Next slide, please. Similarly, how do you make it easy for people to see your menu, book with you, order for dine-in? It's all about eliminating any barriers, and sometimes 5 or 6 clicks is a barrier. So if I can go to a website, see a good photograph, click on it, order it. If I can book somewhere, I just go in, it shows me the times, I understand when there's availability, I click on it, I've secured the booking. Anything that facilitates that customer convenience always works these days. So, I understand that people won't necessarily have these systems themselves, but people more and more use them, are comfortable using them, and if you have the opportunity to use them, it would definitely be in your interest to consider that. And next slide. I think that's my part complete. Thank you for your time. It's it's always interesting doing stuff online because it's not quite the same as getting a feel for people and understanding what's really specific for people's businesses. So it is very top line, but this information shared with you. If people have any questions, I would just suggest, Amanda, that if people have any questions and they want to feed it back to the centre after this, I'm happy to answer any questions after today's session and email responses or anything. But if somebody wants to collate any inquiries, then I'm certainly happy to come back with anything further we can do to help you. We understand how hard it is. I don't really make light, but it's important to have hope because this is the last part of this struggle, hopefully. And it's just, unfortunately, in Sydney, longer than any of us would have liked. But when we get through this, and then we have a high degree of vaccination, in another 3 months, it will be completely different. So it's I try and be positive, but I try and also be realistic. But if you can control what you control in the meantime and use this time to plan and get organised, it will stand you in good stead for when things gradually reopen. So I thank you for your time. I wish you safety and I wish you success when things reopen. But if there's anything else that we can provide in terms of information or any advice that would help any of you guys, then please reach out because our industry. Your industry is our industry. We help retailers. We need people to survive. We very much need this to happen, and we would do anything to help you get to that point. So, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Charles. Thanks for preparing that and sharing your thoughts and research with all of our retailers. I hope everyone has taken something away from that. There's really lots of good tips in there, lots of suggestions. We will share the pack on the Retailer Hub and we can email it out to everyone as well.
Great.
If you do have any specific questions, please direct them to Mark and myself and then we'll feed them back to Charles and try and get an answer for you if we can't answer it ourselves. Now I'm going to hand over to Emma. Emma's from our marketing team. And she's going to talk to you about some of the concepts that we're considering as we sort of roll out of restrictions.
Hi everyone, I'll try and keep it super short, sharp and shiny. I'm really conscious of death by PowerPoint. I know we're overwhelming you with a lot of information. Thanks, Charles. I think a lot of what you presented this morning is super relevant to the rebound strategy that we are kind of planning in the background. Unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball to kind of indicate what the future is going to look like. So a lot of our planning is taken from the information that we get from the daily presses and the government release ongoing throughout lockdown. And we draw assumptions on what we think this is going to look like, but also taking into account that this time last year in restrictions, we did also have trading shopping centres that we did need to pivot and rebound out of lockdown scenarios in staged easements of restrictions. So I'll just share with you a very high level overview, just talking about what we've been planning in the background to help you guys rebound and what other Retailer Academy sessions and other support's going to be available moving forward. We can then have either one-on-ones if you have more questions. I appreciate that this kind of forum is difficult to be interactive and have Q&As. So do feel free to reach out and set one-on-one sessions. We can do another category meeting with all the retailers, being all food, and we can go through in a bit more detail. And of course, we'll share these decks with you so you can have a read through and digest all the information in your own time. So what we are looking at is what our COVID response will look like. And this, sorry, just share screen. And this will be fluid and changeable as things progress and we get more information on kind of when we're going to come out of lockdown and what that's going to look like. So just very high level, obviously dining in, we anticipate will be one of the last things to come back on board when we do ease out of restrictions. We do believe that dining out is going to be, in terms of outdoor al fresco, is what a lot of Charles touched upon earlier. Therefore, we are looking at options to increase our external dining capacity to provide more of a common communal outdoor dining area so that customers are able to order with you, and then if your outdoor external seating areas at full capacity, we're able to then accommodate them in other areas of the precinct, given that we do have quite a large footprint in terms of the additional pedestrian areas that we have that we can activate. We are wanting to increase that dining capacity as much as we can, but doing it in a way that feels intentful, that drive the ambience and people still have a great experience, so that it's dressed nicely and activated in a way that people would expect to see from us. A lot of this is in the works at the moment in terms of working out what our density limits are and what we can actually provide in final numbers. And obviously there are a lot of conversations to be had with council in terms of using public footpaths, impact to the road at the top of Town Square, where each street kind of is anchored, and the vehicle traffic that goes through there. So we hope to be able to have a bit more information on kind of what that would look like in the coming weeks, so that we can then work with you on rolling that out. Charles at the very end there touched on engagement with our customers. So we are looking at providing, I guess, social media support and more kind of digital. So we've done an audit of all retailers in terms of what your social platforms look like, what your digital footprints are in terms of those Google business listings, so that we can then meet with you and understand exactly how that looks for you and kind of what support you might need moving forward from us, if we can support in any way, be it helping you setting up a Google business listing or claiming your business listing, giving you information on the best way to reply to reviews from customers and encourage people to leave reviews, and updating all your information, and also ensuring that your social media is updated as frequently as possible. And we'll work with you on a one-on-one basis on that as well, but we'll also be hosting another retailer session with some of our suppliers who we consider to be kind of experts in that field, to share a similar presentation as what Charles did today. And our digital strategy, so obviously we do anticipate that having click and collect and delivery and the like is going to be around for a little while. So if any retailers need assistance with really amplifying that, or ensuring that, you know, they are onboarding with the right partners in terms of Deliveroo, Uber Eats and the like, then we want to help you get that done and understand exactly how we can do that. And I'll just share with you super quickly in terms of what we're thinking the outdoor dining areas will look like. Obviously we've got some bistro set dining settings in Town Square already, so it's just looking to extend that and having communal picnic tables and other dining options. Obviously we're very conscious that coming into the end of the year and into summer, it's going to be very hot and sunny, so looking at what our kind of weather and shading options are going to be to ensure that customers do still have a comfortable experience. And in terms of making a place feel intentful, we want to drive a sense of occasion so that people do feel like the space has been put together in an ambient way so they still have a great experience, but also being mindful that we're not promoting the wrong message in terms of driving people to this for an occasion, that we are still adhering to the COVID safe rules. And we do plan to hopefully be able to bring the stage area back that we had throughout launch, to really anchor the space and give it a bit more intent, so that we are able to activate potentially just with some ambient music to begin with, and then eventually as restrictions ease further, a lot of the marketing activity will be based around this in terms of activating each street and giving it a real kind of presence throughout the summer months, and activating externally, as obviously it's a great space to use anyway, but I think people or customers will feel more comfortable being out in the open. So we just want to make the best of kind of the space that we do have there. So if you have any questions about this, happy to take those offline. I would like to introduce you to a couple of suppliers that we've been working with to help us, I guess, in a digital sense. So a lot of you will have already been in touch with Adam from Mr. Yum. A lot of our retailers have already onboarded. So Mr. Yum is a web-based QR code menu kind of mobile ordering platform. So you browse the menu and you make your purchase through this QR code, and then customers are pinged when their meal is ready. So I'll get Adam to take you through that. But we've also got John from Mr. Yum. Open Table. Open Table, a lot of you may have seen or you may not have seen. It's in its most simple form. It's a reservation tool, an online booking tool for customers to book at your restaurant. So we want to get all retailers onboarded on this, because we know from launch a lot of customers' feedback was around wanting to be able to make a reservation ahead of time. But we also think that having this tool will also help you when we do ease out of restrictions and indoor dining does become a thing again, and you are still limited to numbers. It will just help you rotate through your covers throughout the day, and also keep an eye on your numbers and ensuring that you know what's coming, so you can plan ahead in terms of staffing and also stock and produce. So I might just hand over to John real quickly. This will be a very short, sharp and shiny overview of kind of what we're going to roll out. after this, we will be in touch with more information and set up sessions for each retailer to onboard properly. So over to you, John.
Thanks, Emma. So great to meet you all. I'm John. I head up new restaurant partnerships for OpenTable across New South Wales. I've shared some slides across with Emma that I'm happy for her to share across with you guys as well, just outlining what we do. But essentially, the goal here is that we can do as much as we can to assist with your own goals for the next few months. So OpenTable will allow you to take reservations through the shared. That's okay, Emma. I don't think I'm going to go through the slides here, but essentially, just as a quick overview, it will allow you to take bookings from the Ed.Square website, push them through to your venue, as well as give you the opportunity to take those same reservations anywhere else that you'd like. So the widget will be deployed onto your website, onto any of your social media posts, and then we can tie that back to whatever event that you're running. So as Charles mentioned, if you wanted to do something like a set menu or some sort of experience to raise your average spend per head, that's all powered through OpenTable. So as people come through and make a reservation, depending on the rules that you've got set up in the background, it might be that we say, for instance, on a Friday, anything that books from 1 to 2 just gets a standard reservation. 3 to 4, we capture a credit card. 5 or more needs to put down a deposit or pay for a set menu. However you want to run it, this will allow you to do that. From the reservation side, we know that no-show rates during a pandemic are really high, especially just after a pandemic. So we've got a lot of data to say that the bounce rate from our post-pandemic bookings, it goes up a fair bit. So we've implemented a lot of tools to ensure that you're getting everyone that's making a reservation. So from the moment they've made the booking, we'll take care of getting them to the venue. So we'll get them emails out, we'll get them text messages, we'll start group chats with all their friends so that they're able to all see exactly where the venue is and what sort of options that you're offering on that particular shift. And it's meant that we've got a no-show rate in Sydney post-pandemic down to 1.9%, which is really good. So I guess Emma can talk you guys through a little bit more about what the opportunity is together, share across the slides, and I look forward to speaking with you all individually and seeing what role OpenTable can play in your restaurant.
Great, thank you, John. And we might just hand over quickly to Adam to summarise exactly what role Mr. Yum are looking to play as we roll out across Ed.
Cool, thanks, Emma. And hello, I know there's a bunch of you that I've already met and that I've already spoken to, so nice to reconnect. And there are already a bunch of retailers at Ed.Square using Mr. Yum. So, hopefully you guys can actually just talk amongst yourselves and understand how it works and the benefits and everything. Emma, did you want me to go through? I did have a little presentation.
Yeah, I'll share the screen because I don't think you'll be able to. Technology is against us today.
And again, I'm definitely conscious of time, so I'll try and get through this. This isn't going to be so much talking about what Mr. Yum does necessarily, because we'll get Emma to send through a little presentation on what we do after, but this is more sort of, tying in with what Charles was talking about and the rebound strategy and how you can harness this sort of technology, and how hospitality and entertainment venues already have realized that they can use this sort of technology as a response to COVID. So just a quick snapshot. Mr. Yum, we started in late 2018 just as a visual menu company. So you'd scan a QR code, brings up a beautiful visual menu. We've quickly grown to a team of over 100 people. We have offices in Melbourne, in Sydney, in London, and in LA now. So there's quite a bit of manpower and capital behind it. We've got over 1,200 venues using Mr. Yum, and that's across different categories. So the way that you utilize this technology is really different across different venue types. So you can use Mr. Yum for your dine-in ordering. You can use it for your pickup, for delivery, for entertainment venues deliver to seat, or for hotels to do charge to room. So there's different ways you can utilize this tech. And we've actually had 11 million Australians use Mr. Yum. So almost half the population has used it. And as you guys all know, especially with having to check in for contact tracing, QR codes is something that are really easy to use, and everyone can use them. So if you want to do the next slide. As it says, to understand how we can rebound and what the future of dining out looks like, we can actually look to innovation and consumer behavior in other categories. So I'll touch on 3 points very quickly. The first one, which you can see here, is sort of why self-checkout innovation and consumer behavior in retail, in airports, and in supermarkets actually applies to hospitality now. And then I'll get into as well how Apple, the tech, global giant Apple, redesigned the retail experience, and how that sort of affects food and bev and how we can apply it in a post-COVID world. And then also, Spotify's approach to personalization and what that means for hospitality and entertainment. So just going back quickly to the self-checkout, this is something that's become super standard over the last 5 years, as you would all know, especially in grocery shopping and checking in at the airports and whatnot. When the idea first came out, as is the case with a lot of innovation, there's a lot of pushback. As is the case with Mr. Yum, we get a lot of pushback from certain venues, and I'm sure a lot of you have your reservations and hesitations around the service element and customer experience and everything. That's totally normal. And just like with the self-serve, people are saying it's going to be removing jobs, and customers are saying, why should I have to go to the labor of putting through my own order and payment and everything. But fast forward to today, and this is common, and it's to the crazy level now that we actually see, despite there being staff available at checkout to put the groceries in the bag, or to check someone in at the airport, we're still opting for self-checkout. It's become the default, and a lot of people prefer this sort of service, which is true in supermarkets and in airports. I'm sure you've all experienced that. So, similarly with any order from table QR code sort of technology, as we sort of enter this new phase of hospitality, you're going to find that customers are super comfortable using this technology. At Mr. Yum, we aim to make it as seamless and as intuitive and frictionless as possible. So it's something that they're all going to feel comfortable doing. And there's going to be a point in time where you realize it's the new normal. And so this is the future. So that's self-checkout. If we look at Apple for a moment, if you want to go back to the next slide. Yep. I know it may seem weird comparing, a company like Apple to hospitality. But, retail is struggling, yet for some reason, Apple stores are always cranking and there's always so many people. So it's important to understand why and what they're doing differently and how that applies to hospitality. Of course, they've got cool products, but it's, what is it in the in-store experience that they're doing differently? The products are out, so just like you would have your menu through Mr. Yum, but it's super educational and really interactive. So as a customer, you can have as much interaction with the staff as you want, or as little as you want. The staff aren't there just to put through an order and take a payment or sell you something. So it's not super transactional. They're there to create like an educational and an interactive journey. So utilizing digital menus and mobile ordering and payments and everything, your staff can actually triple down on the value add and talking about your menu, your specials, education around technology. And so the biggest misconception really is that by using this sort of tech, you're just reducing interaction, or you're eliminating that staff, the need for staff. And some venues will use it to literally cut out staff, and again, everyone uses it differently, but like Apple does, you can really use it to provide an amazing interactive experience with the customers. And obviously, just go, and we don't like to say this too much, but in a post-COVID world, obviously it's super safe and contact free and everything. So that's, I guess, a bonus. And then if we look at Spotify, I don't know how familiar you all are with Spotify, but it's probably the most popular music streaming platform. And for years and years, and actually Charles spoke about this in his presentation, and focusing on things that we can control, such as collecting data and engaging with customers and driving sales with offers. Spotify, for years, when they initially existed, just collected data. They collected so much data. And from that data, they were able to put together and understand exactly who each customer was and what each customer liked. And so now, if you go on Spotify, every single day, you've got like a newly curated and personalized playlist according to like your taste. And so people love finding new music because Spotify knows who they are and based on the data they've collected. So there's never been a tool like Mr. Yum or anything in hospitality that can capture data to the degree that we do. If you're pushing through 90% of your customers, because again, we can do dine-in, pick-up, delivery. So we can cover every single transaction that goes through, and you can learn exactly who your customer is. And then you can use the inbuilt marketing tools, the CRM integrations. You can be building, again, a huge database, an email database. You can use our in-depth voucher code system to be offering discounts and other offers to bring them back in. So through collecting this data, much like Spotify did, you really get to understand who the customer is. So if you want to go to the next stage, next slide, I guess, and the one after that, just to summarize, self-checkout, staff are still available, but customers are opting for self-checkout. And so we're heading to a future where it's just the new norm. And the crazy thing is, actually, if you head to the next slide again, and the one after that, what that means for hospitality is that, as again Charles said, and we know this, customers spend more through Mr. Yum. On average, it's 20 to 30% more. You get the labor efficiencies, you get increase in staff retention and happiness and all of that, satisfaction, valuable data. So there are so many benefits, and the future that we're heading towards, and the way that like 1,200 of our partners have realized since COVID happened, like staffing costs are so high, and it's hard to find good staff, and it's hard to retain the staff now. And there's shrinking margins, and there are overheads, and the government grants they're not enough. So you need to find ways to utilize technology to increase your revenue, to optimize operations. And so this is really where Mr. Yum comes into play and can really do wonders. So we've got like beautiful QR codes. They're fully branded to your guidelines and your logos and your colors and everything. So if you want to go to the next slide, if you're doing something like this, then we can definitely help you. But that's kind of how you guys can use Mr. Yum as part of the rebound strategy in reopening and bouncing back from COVID.
That was really great. Thank you, Adam. That was a very insightful overview. And I think having those kind of real life options like the self-service checkout and Apple really give context to the value that having a platform like this adds.
Yeah, and just on that, like pretty much every other industry, and it was probably around the time of the GFC, was forced to go online, and hospitality has always taken a little bit longer. Like we started Mr. Yum because of the insight that the printed menu hasn't changed for 350 years or thereabouts. So in hospitality always takes a bit longer, but we're getting there. Pretty much every other industry has already done this sort of stuff. So it's our turn.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I think that's it from us this morning. Obviously, there's a lot of information for you all to take in. So what I think we'll do is we'll just consolidate kind of a high level overview of everything and kind of what next steps will be and what you all need to kind of keep an eye out for and what to expect from us over the coming weeks. We'll be in touch with more information on what the rebound strategy in itself looks like. We'll set time for you guys to all meet with Mr. Yum and Open Table if that's an option that you're wanting to look into, and any other of that kind of digital support stuff and social engagement that we spoke about as well and that Charles touched upon. Those are all facets that we're looking to work with you on and support you with, and then yeah, we'll just kind of go from there and set up one-on-ones.
Thanks, Emma. So I think that probably concludes our presentation for today. Retailers, if you have any questions, as I mentioned earlier, please direct them to Mark and myself. Hopefully you can think about the content that was presented to you today and how you can utilise that to improve your offer and drive better outcomes. And as Emma said, we'll be in touch to talk to you about our rebound coming out of restrictions and how we can maximise additional seeding to try and support you to grow your revenue. But thank you so much for your time. I know it's hard to sit in front of a screen for an hour and a half, but we really appreciate that you've given it your attention, and I hope I get to see you all soon.